today's webinar, we're going to be going over how to get your Vault account ready for incoming officers as we're in officer transition season for a lot of chapters. My name is Sarah Beth Russell. I'm going to be your presenter today, and my co-host is Amanda Bramley. She is going to be answering any questions that come in through the question box. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Amanda really quick. She is going to give us a little background information about Omega Phi right before we get started.
Thank you, Sarah Beth. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda, and as Sarah Beth said, I will be answering any questions that you may have. But first, I'm going to let you know who Omega Phi is. For more than 30 years, Omega Phi has provided technology solutions to help customers manage their finances, streamline their operations, recruit new members, and communicate with their members. We are based out of Columbus, Georgia, and we securely process more than 1.1 million per day for our clients and have securely processed more than 4 billion since 1992. We're also deeply committed to serving, promoting, and advancing the fraternity and sorority experience. We're passionate about what we do, and it's this passion that has encouraged our clients to trust us to do the heavy lifting so they can focus on their mission and having fun. So that's who Omega Phi is, and now I will pass it back over to Sarah Beth.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to look at our agenda for today. So these are kind of the things we're going to be going over. We're going to look at how to update your officer names in the system to show who the new officers holding the positions are. We're going to also look at how to update their permissions in Vault, as well as get rid of permissions for old officers, and looking at the same thing for permissions with bill pay for old and new officers. And then we're going to look at how to update the statement on contact, as well as a few other things, looking at officer purchasing cards and how to cancel those and order new ones. And then we'll do some reminders and Q&A at the end. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Vault. Okay, so when you're logging into Vault, this is going to be your dashboard. We're going to go ahead and start with how to update your officer names under the titles in Vault. So under the chapter tab, we're going to go to officers on the left side column, and there's a few different things you can do here. So if you need to add an office, you can do that. So if there's one that you don't already have listed, you can add that. We wanted to add like recruitment chair, create the office, and then it will pop up down here. You can also edit that name and delete it with that. So for this one, like, it doesn't have an officer. So when we go to edit officers, we'll use that as the example. But when you click on edit officers, this is how you would update those. So you can use the drop down to slot anybody into the officer position. So we can go ahead and assign the officer position, and you want to make sure you put in the date. So whenever their start date is, so you can either do it for now, or if they take over on November 1st and then they're there until November 1st of the next year, you can do that as well. And it's going to auto put an end date for the old officer. So when you're doing this, sometimes with the system, when you go to update the officer, if it ever throws you any type of error message, just make sure you have an end date over here for your old officer. And then another thing that sometimes might happen, let's say Peter currently is the treasurer and he's moving to president. Sometimes you might have to go ahead and update the treasurer to the new officer so that Peter's no longer holding the position, and then update to him to president. So just be mindful of those things. If when you go to update the officers, it does not update, those might be some things that are causing that. So once you update that, you'll see the new person in there. Because we put her as November 1st starting, she won't show up until that date. But whenever you do, so if we put somebody for today, you would see them already in that position. And then also export your officer list from here if you need to keep that outside of Vault somewhere. So before you update your officers, you can export it. And then after you update it, if you want the new list, you can do that as well. After we've updated our officers, we need to update their permissions accordingly. So just because somebody is listed as a position on this officers page doesn't mean they're automatically have the permissions they need within Vault. But do note that all the officers, when added, they do automatically have managed communication permissions when added. So they'll have access to this tab here to be able to send like announcements and mass emails, that sort of thing, and look out that information. But that's the only permission they'll have. So you have to go in and update any of their other permissions. We'll do that under this little gear icon here. and then you'll go to Vault Users. So once we get to this page, we're going to look at how to add a user, and then we'll also look at how you can remove any previous users or adjust access if maybe they're just changing positions. So we can add a user here. You'll use the drop down, choose what user you're adding. You can fill in this information. You need to have a user reason. So you can also add like advisors here as well. You just need to make sure you add them as a contact first, and you can choose the various different reasons. And then here you have the ability to kind of customize what they have permission to. So for this particular one, we slotted her as like recruitment chair. If that is the case, then she might not have access to all of these permissions. So just make sure you're going through. They can either have no access, view access, or manage access. So depending on what you want, like let's say she needs managed to everything except for just view on billing, or actually let's do manage because she has a card, and then view, and then no access. These are newer, so if you've been seeing these, this is going to just allow a little more customization to your Vault permissions here. So if somebody maybe has bill pay access and they can see the general things, but they don't need to see all the transaction details, same with the accounting tab, then you can adjust their access here. So we can do that, and then once you have figured out what exactly you want them to have access to, you can hit submit, and they will be added to that Vault user list. Now, if somebody needs to have their access edited or deleted, we can do that from the screen as well. So let's say if Peter's no longer going to be the treasurer, but he's not taking any other position, you can delete his access with the little trash can icon. But if he's moving a position, like maybe he's moving to a lower position and doesn't need as much access, he doesn't need access to the financial information anymore, you can go in and it's going to be the same screen as when you're adding, and you'll just change the access accordingly. It's important to make sure you're updating these accesses though, making sure that only a limited amount of people have access, the people who need it, and as well as there's a few other things that come into play when people have access. You aren't able to update billing statuses if somebody has Vault access. So if, like I said, if one of these members is no longer going to be in a position, let's say because they're graduating, you're also going to need to update their billing status. So if we go under billing, update billing statuses here, we can kind of see what having Vault access does. Because they have Vault access, it's saying they're in some sort of position where they have access to the account, and that typically means that they are an active member. So it's not allowing for updating of the billing status. So definitely, if somebody is graduating, you will need to delete their Vault access in order for you to be able to select them to move them from active to inactive billing status. So that's one other repercussion of that. So make sure you're updating those accordingly, not just adding your new people, but also removing anybody who needs that taken away. And then after we update Vault permissions, we need to grant bill pay permissions for anyone who might need to have those as well. So we'll go under bill pay to user access here. Similarly to what I was saying with access when you're adding your officers, that's not automatically given. Same kind of with the bill pay access, just because you give someone manage access on the Vault user page doesn't give them access to the full depth of all the bill pay things. There are some things that you have to give them individual access to. This again just allows for more customization. So if we need to update their access, you click on the member you're wanting to update. It's going to take you to this screen here, and you're going to want to update their global permissions first. Again, this just allows you to be able to control what they can and can't see. So let's say they don't need to view bills, but maybe they need to enter bills, but not manage vendors, or they have a card, so they do need to manage card. Whatever you need to update it to, you can. For this, we're just going to go with grant all permissions. Typically, with like treasurer or president, they're going to have all of these permissions available. So I'm just going to show kind of how you would do it with that. But so you'll see that all of these are yes. Again, you can change them to whatever you need them to be. And then you'll hit this little plus button here When you do that, this is going to bring up a box here for your different funds. So if you have bill pay funds, you need to grant your officers access to each individual fund accordingly. So depending on what the fund is, you'll just say grant all permissions or change it. I find it easier to do grant all permissions and then go in and change to no, whatever needs to be no. You shouldn't ever have where anybody can self-refund or self-reimburse. And then the print checks locally is only if your chapter has that. And then you can also control these things. Some people may only be able to view the fund and everything else may be no. So again, accordingly update these. And then depending on how many funds you have, you'll just keep pressing this plus button essentially until you have run out of funds to give permissions to. And this also allows if you have a separate house account that maybe your housing director has access to, but not to the chapter funds, you can give him access to just that, things like that. So you may not be granting access to all these funds for everyone. Again, you can tailor it to the needs of whatever the officer is. We're going to go ahead now and look at in-bill pay as well. If the new officer is going to need a officer purchasing card, or if any of your old officers need to cancel their card because you're getting the new card or they're not going to need it anymore, whatever that is, you can also go down to this bill pay tab that we're in currently. You'll just hop over to officer purchasing cards. And from here, we can add a card. If you are adding it for the officer, you can do for others and then pick who needs to receive that, and then it'll ask for information. You'll fill that out so that they can be enrolled and get their card. Now, if you're going to cancel a card, we don't have a card on this account, but I have on our PowerPoint some visuals to just show. So this is what it would look like if you did have a card on the account. You would click on the name of the card holder and it'll take you to where you can see all their transactions, and then at the top you'll see this here where it has register and profile. The name of whoever the card holder is will be right above that in Vault, and you'll hop over to the profile side. When you're on the profile side, right underneath that, you'll have this little red button that says card actions, and you can do cancel card. So that's how you would cancel a card for any officer who is no longer going to be in that position and doesn't need a card. So after you have ordered cards and canceled any that need to be, the last thing that you're kind of going to need to do is make sure your statement on contact is updated. So we can go do that under the billing tab and then your statement contact information. So this is going to be who's listed as the contact on your statements that go out to members and parents. So this is typically the treasurer, but I've also seen president, just depending on whoever that needs to be, whoever's going to be the one that when statements goes out, any questions will be asked to them. You're going to want to update it to that person. So if the treasurer is changing for this chapter, we would update that accordingly. Make sure you put in the new phone and email address. And then this is also a really good time to review that statement message if that needs to be updated as well. So if you offer some sort of prepayment discount and you put that in the statement message and that needs to be updated accordingly, you can change that statement message. But we do have this automated message. We do suggest keeping this portion in here just so they're aware of how they can remit an e-check, and then as well as the processing fee for the paper check. And then you will just update your statement contact information when you are done. And that is pretty much everything when you're going through that you need to update for your new officers to come in. Did want to go over a few reminders for tax filing reminders. If you guys use Vault Pro, the filing for that is coming up. So if your fiscal year ending is 5/31, the October 15th is the submission date for that. And then for fiscal year ending in 6/30, that is going to be November 15th coming up here. And I'm going to go ahead, we're going to go to Q&A, but I'm going to go ahead and while we're doing that, put this up here on the screen for you. So this is going to be any of your contact information. This is going to be also something else that you'll need to make sure you provide to your new officers. So when they come in, if they're having questions, they can always reach out to their point of contact at Omegafy. So make sure they have that information. We have the operations support at omegafy.com. That is your chapter support. And then for members and parents, they can reach out to customer service at Omegafy. And then if you're having issues with any members logging in, login support. And then we do have the help center within Vault as well. Actually, hold on. We can look at that really quick. If you in Vault, click on the Get Help. This is a really great tool for anything you might need. You can search for something and all the articles that pertain to that or that have those keywords will pull up, so you can kind of search through what exactly you're needing and get some answers there. But if you're not able to get them there, again, we have this contact information. But I will go ahead. Amanda, do we have any questions that have come through?
We had one question. Someone asked when the best time to add officers, when that would be. Do you have any recommendations on that?
Yeah, so I think it kind of just depends on your chapter, but I would say it's probably best to get them in as soon as they are known to be the new officer, even if you don't necessarily like officially have them in into a certain date. You might want to go ahead and add them to the system, or if they don't need to have permission until that date, then you can wait to add them until then. I think it's kind of up to you guys, but I will say on some of those things like ordering the officer purchasing card, the sooner you get them in and order that card for them, the sooner that that's going to come in and to be able to be used for them. So I think timeline wise, just think about what that officer's needs are going to be and how soon they need to be in the system. Same with like if technically they're taking over, but they're not officially the officer until January 1st, but maybe spring billing needs to be set up, they might go ahead and have access and work with the old treasurer to get billing set up for spring. So just kind of think of what exactly the needs of your chapter are and go from there to add them at the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you. And then also someone asked earlier if this recording will be available for their future officers, and yes, it will be. We'll upload it to YouTube. We'll also upload it to our help center, and we'll also send it out in an email as well. And okay, another question just came through. How do you access chapter funds? To access chapter funds, that's through bill pay and your operation bill pay fund. If you're having problems with that, you can always contact us and we can walk you through that.
Yeah, just and for a visual, if pulling it up under the bill pay tab, your registers, these are where your funds are going to be located. So if you have the permission to access those, that is where you can pull that up. And then you can click into this to look at any individual transactions again if you have those permissions. So if you try to go to this page and it's saying you don't have access, then you might need to talk to an officer who does have access to get you updated. Okay, and if there's, I don't think I see any other questions. Oh, actually, I do. Somebody's asking how to update non-undergrad officers on the officer page. So I know I kind of briefly mentioned this earlier, but you will need to add them as a contact. So if you have like an advisor, you would go to contacts here and you can add a contact. So like we can see Amanda is added as a contact. You would fill in this information, create the contact. Once that contact is created, under that gear icon where you add permissions for your Vault users, you would go to add user like normal, and they will be in this drop down. There will be like another section that will say contacts rather than members, and they'll be in that portion, and then you can just click on them and give them whatever permissions are needed. Okay, I think that is everything. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to keep this up for a second. So you guys, if you need that information, can take a screenshot or write it down, whatever you need. But thank you guys so much for joining us today for the webinar. If you have any questions, just reach out to your contact in Client Ops and they will get you taken care of. And we hope you guys have a wonderful day.